getting old when you get out on the road and you're doing what you're told. Just forget.
Soccer, the beautiful game, the world's game, America's game. For me, it has been. But my soccer career didn't start on some plush carpet of green grass. It started here on this street in 1983. My grandparents hosted an annual block party here, and one of their neighbors invited Ricky Davis of the Cosmos to come. He came to the party, kicked the ball around with us kids, and the rest for me has been history. That experience with Ricky Davis prompted me to spend most of my childhood springs and falls on soccer fields like this one. In the beginning, I was a skinny little kid chasing a ball around a field that was way too big, shooting on a goal that was a converted football goalpost. The kids knew almost as much about the game as the parent coaches who were put in charge of us. By the time I was 11, my father had got roped into coaching our team, and he had read enough books and watched enough videos that he was able to convey a little bit of the game to us. In 8th grade, I considered a change from soccer to football. My brother and I were good athletes. We had performed well in the football games of our neighborhood when we were kids. The allure of the Saturday games was a little too tempting, but ultimately we both decided to stay with soccer in high school. We played for the school in the fall and the club in the spring. I graduated from high school in 1994, the year of the rebirth of soccer in the U.S. Like any young child, soccer in the U.S. needed a lot of nurturing and care in the beginning. It went through awkward stages, and believe me, a lot of growing pains. I was there in France in 1998. I felt the pain. Soccer in the U.S. is about to become 17 years old. Like most 17-year-olds, it's going through a rather awkward stage in its life, where it's trying to figure out who it is and what it can become in the future. When teenagers try to figure out where they fit in the world, they often compare themselves to the popular kids. So I talk to sports talk radio hosts that cover the big sports to see where soccer is in their opinion.
My knowledge of soccer from 1 to 10 probably would be it'd probably be a 4.
I would say probably between a 2 and a 4. Realistically, it's closer to a 2. 4 would be a blatant lie. I know some of the basic players. I understand the game of soccer. World Cup time, I'll watch the darn thing. But overall, it's not something I follow on a day-to-day basis.
3? That might be a little generous. I'm a World Cup guy. I love international competition, but I tell you what, the Philadelphia Union, I just don't get too caught up in that sort of.
I mean, my MLS knowledge right now is not very good. I mean, I know the teams. I couldn't tell you the rosters of, all the new teams, like the team in Kansas City or the team in Spokane or wherever these new teams are. I mean, I know the Philadelphia Union, but not super well because they're only in the years. But I can go back, to the Cosmos, the Pele and Beckenbauer and those guys coming back to the original MLS back in the 70s when we thought soccer was going to explode in the U.S. And I've covered World Cup, so I would say compared to most sports radio hosts in America, I'd put myself at a 9 because most guys in this country who do sports talk radio couldn't name 2 soccer players. Don't even know who Pele is or Beckenbauer or any of the greats.
That's a really good question. I would think participatory, it's probably right there in the 4th position. I would think that more kids play soccer today in America than they do hockey. So participatory would be 4, and there are a lot of reasons for that, mainly because a lot of parents don't want to see their kids hurt to play other sports, so I think they feel soccer is the safest. Plus, it's the one where little kids can get involved in better than any other sport probably, because technically it doesn't take a lot for a kid to kick a ball around, run up and down the field, and they learn the tricks of the trade a little later. But I would say as far as the public paying attention to it, it's probably below hockey in the 5th spot. Maybe even a little lower. I mean, you have to throw boxing in and things like that. So, there's a mismatch after 4, I think.
Well, I think it's a clear past number 4, even throw hockey in there as well, and some will argue NASCAR is a sport too. I think in terms of at a professional level, soccer's very low on this scale. With the MLS, for instance, here in Philly, we got an MLS team, and yet it's not a topic that's really ever come up on my sports talk show. But it's amazing because young kids in America mainly play soccer growing up. And at some point, they stop. And I think a lot of it has to do with football and the culture of, well, you're more masculine if you play football in 9th grade when you get into high school. So a lot of kids who play both and enjoy both growing up, when they have to make that choice to play competitively, end up picking football.
Well, I mean, right now you're looking at, it's clearly the NFL. The NFL's the beast, printing money. Now, this whole labor dispute, who knows? I don't think it'll hurt them too much. They'll always have the fans. I would go NFL 1, followed by MLB, even though that's hurting in certain towns because, you know, Pittsburgh and Kansas City, you can't expect them to care too much when their team doesn't put anything out on the field for them. We're lucky here in Philadelphia because they spend money. Major League Baseball 2. I would put NBA 3, although in Philadelphia it's really hurting, but a lot of the major cities that started to come back, like New York, Chicago. NHL's 4th. I think the MLS, you know, if you want to make an argument, it's 5th. I think that's fair. I think 5th. They have a passionate fan base, but it's not a top 4. For instance, we don't discuss it really at all on the air. We don't talk much hockey either. It's mostly basketball, not even so much basketball anymore, really, as it is football and baseball.
Unfortunately, I think for the average fan, it's going to be below probably the NHL. I think it's football. I think football, and then you're going to go to baseball. I know a lot of people diss baseball, but baseball still has more viewers because it's a long season, bigger ballparks. So I would go football, baseball, basketball, hockey, and then soccer, unfortunately. And in many cases, it may be NASCAR ahead of soccer. Soccer may be 6th or 7th on some people's list, and that's unfortunate. And I don't know what it's going to take. The same argument I make with people about hockey is, you know, hockey's been around for a long time. You know, here in Philadelphia, the Flyers won Stanley Cups 35 years ago. Yet they still sell out the building, even though this team hasn't won a championship in forever. So I think soccer is probably 5th or 6th to the average American sports fan.
I do not think that soccer can take off, and that's not because it's a bad sport. It's a good sport. It's just that Americans have grown up with other sports that have become more of a priority. They follow the other sports a lot more. You can follow them a lot more because they're on television all the time. We all grow up playing baseball and football and things like that before I think we get to soccer. Now, I can't speak for the new generation of people, the kids that are like from 5 to 10 now, who are participating more in soccer, have a chance to save it. But as far as my generation and where I come from perspective, I don't think it could grow in America, and not because it's a good sport. It's because there are others that are, I don't want to say better, because that's like soccer, but more familiar to Americans.
I think it has a place. I think soccer has a lot of room to grow in this country. I think soccer has to find a way to make it more exciting for an American audience. We like runs. We like points. America likes that. We like football games. We love we like the St. Louis Rams years ago when they scored 45 points a game. We like baseball games where you have home runs, hence the steroid era. Hockey changed its rules and its game to accommodate more offense because people didn't want a 2-1, 1-0 game. And I think when you watch a soccer game and you invest, you know, a couple hours of your life into watching the game, and every 20 minutes you might have 15 seconds of fun because there's almost a scoring opportunity, it bores a lot of people in this country. And to invest so much of your time to watch a 1-0 game, I think it bores a lot of people in a country where we like fast-paced stuff, we like scoring runs, and we want to see more offense.
You know what? I don't know. I go back and forth on that one. It seems like there could be because where I live in the city, for instance, I live a couple blocks away from the Dark Horse. I don't know if you're familiar with that bar, but it's pretty much the home of the Philadelphia Union and their fans. So they're a passionate bunch. You know, stadium in Chester, that probably doesn't help, but it is a nice stadium. They're starting to get a fan base. My point is, particular towns who have teams, Seattle, I know the fan base there is pretty passionate about the team. Those towns might have a certain pocket that really get into it. I find it hard to believe, however, that it'll branch out so much where people in other towns that don't have teams will care, or even people in Philadelphia, for instance, will have that considered up there with the Phillies or Eagles. I don't think it'll ever get that point.
It depends on what you mean by taking off. I mean, I think the MLS is a solid league. I think we're seeing more and more support. You know, you always hear, well, little kids play soccer and then they grow up and they don't care about it anymore. But I think we're seeing generations of younger kids who now not only play it because their moms and dads drop them off at the field on Saturday morning and they just run around in circles and don't really understand dribbling and the game and the art of the game. I think that you're going to see a lot of these kids now stay interested. Kids will grow up and say, hey, I like this sport. And maybe they go to college and play soccer. And, you know, with the Landon Donovans and some of the great players, I think you're going to see more and more. They said the same thing about hockey. Well, there's no U.S. hockey players. You know, and the Mike Richters of the world come along and some of the great players, and Chris Chelios, and you're going to see more and more U.S. And I think soccer has an advantage over a sport like hockey because, to me, soccer is the world's equivalent of basketball. In this country, you only need one ball, a bunch of kids, you go out and you play. And I think soccer has that same advantage. You don't have to have full sides to play a game. You can have 3-on-3. So I think the fact that it's very, very inexpensive to play, you don't have to have the finest equipment, you don't have to have the regulation nets. I think soccer has an advantage in this country to be an urban sport that more and more young kids will get into without having to spend all the money and having all the practice time and the equipment necessary.
I think if we really wanted to be good at soccer, we would. I think if there was that kind of an effort, it's just like in hockey, when we wanted to compete against the best in the world and we were clearly inferior to the Eastern Bloc. We made a commitment that we were going to be better than that Eastern Bloc, and they wound up doing it. And it's the same thing in the Olympics when you put your professional athletes in there. When you want to be better as an American, chances are you're going to be better because there's so many resources, so much talent that you can mine, so many equipment advantages, things like that. So I don't, is it a little inferior complex? Maybe, but I don't think we put the effort in to really be a great soccer country.
I think there's something to be said about that. I think if they were better, the U.S. team, if they won a World Cup, I think that would galvanize a lot of people to say, hey, this soccer might be something we should take up and take a little bit more seriously. I mean, I don't know how that really answers your question. And maybe it is that we are just looking at it and saying, well, we're not great at it, so therefore we don't care.
Absolutely. We didn't invent it. I think America's biggest problem is if we didn't invent the sport, then we don't care about it, generally speaking. You know, we didn't invent soccer, so we're not going to sit here and brag about it. We invented baseball, yet I've talked to many friends who said if baseball didn't exist, Keith Olbermann said this to me once, one of my good friends. He said, if baseball didn't exist and somebody came out today and said, hey, I got this new sport. This guy's throwing a pitch, guys hit, and it takes 3 hours, and there's not much scoring, and there's not much, you know, baseball would fail today. The only reason baseball exists is because of its history and because, you know, teams are followed by many, many generations of fans. But it's not an action sport. It's not a sport that would succeed today. It only succeeds because of its history. I think soccer is one of those sports, like hockey in America, where you keep waiting for it to explode. Will it take the U.S. to win a World Cup? I don't even know. The U.S. won the hockey gold medal in 1980, and everyone thought that would be what would take, you know, get hockey off the ground in this country. I just think it's still not a mass appeal enough sport to make it the sport that everybody wants it to be in the U.S.
I'm not even sure they take notice in the World Cup. I think that Americans really have to buy into the fact that Americans have a legitimate chance to win before they get really interested. And unfortunately, as good as the American soccer program and U.S. soccer has grown over the years, it's still you still don't get the sense that they can actually compete against the great teams that play in the World Cup. So, again, there had to be a serious commitment to being the best in the world before Americans, I think, would buy in. And then the next World Cup, if Americans are advertised, this is the team that can actually win the World Cup, I think the fans would buy in.
There's no question. The World Cup is the only time. You can walk around any major city, Philly, New York, and you're going to see people wearing their country's jersey at a bar watching a game in groups. You don't really get that as open and as public for a big Man U Real Madrid game. It doesn't happen. I don't think Americans in general subscribe to the soccer package on TV. I don't think they really care about it as much. But the reason they care about World Cup soccer, again, goes back to the fact these players are representing your country. And you want to beat up on Mexico. You want to beat up in different countries. But MLS soccer is so bad compared to the world. And I think we look at it as like we're getting the washed up players, like the David Beckham of old. You know, the great David Beckham's not coming here to play. The washed up David Beckham's coming here to play. So we're getting the rejects. And our good players go elsewhere to play because they make more money. So I think no one really cares about soccer with our league here and other tournaments. They care about the World Cup because it's nationalistic pride.
Yes, I think so. Yeah, I mean, there was that, what was the Confederation Cup or whatever it was when they lost to Brazil in the finals. There was a little bit of enthusiasm about that. The World Cup, I thought people got into that, but that's the only time.
And on the grand scale of things, probably yes. I think the fact that if the World Cup is viewable during daytime or primetime hours, I think more Americans will watch it.
I guess I would, it's just like anything else. I would like to know more about the personalities. I would know more about the stars. So in America, we milk our stars.